You say it's love, but love doesn't beg. Love doesn't monitor. Love doesn't panic when the message is left on red. What you feel is not love, it's fear. A fear so old and so familiar, you've mistaken it for intimacy. You don't want to lose them, not because of who they are, but because of who you become when you're alone. You don't miss them. You miss the version of yourself that feels less empty when they're around. Let's be honest, what you call being in love is often just emotional surveillance. Checking if they're online, wondering why they haven't texted, measuring the pause between their words, comparing the tone today versus yesterday, scrolling through old conversations looking for reassurance, replaying voice messages just to hear something that felt real. That's not love. That's obsession. That's hypervigilance. That's fear of abandonment, wearing the mask of romance. Rollo warned us about this, how neurotic love isn't rooted in connection, but in possession, in fear, in the attempt to erase one's own anxiety by clinging to another. You want to be someone's priority because you're terrified of being forgotten. You want constant attention because silence triggers your old wounds. You want to feel chosen because deep down, you never chose yourself. You start to confuse availability with love, responsiveness with care, possession with connection. But think about it. How often do you feel calm when you don't hear from them? How often do you spiral into imaginary scenarios, punishing yourself for something you didn't even do? How often do you need a reply, not because of what was said, but because of what you fear in the silence? This is the lie we're taught, that love should hurt a little, that jealousy means passion, that suffering is the price you pay for connection. But the truth? Most people aren't looking for love. They're looking for a guardian, someone to protect them from their own emptiness. We romanticize this emptiness. We call it longing. We write songs about it. We build entire stories around it. But longing is just loneliness idealized, and obsession is just fear misunderstood. It's not about them. It never was. You think you're in love with the person, but what you really crave is the feeling of being needed. Because if you're needed, maybe you matter. And if you matter, maybe you're not so easy to leave. This is not about judging you. This is about waking you up. Because if what you call love always makes you feel anxious, unsure, unstable, it's not love. It's emotional captivity, a prison built from your past. And every time you chase it, hoping it'll finally make you feel safe, you reinforce the very fear that keeps you trapped. Maybe it's time to ask, would I still love them if I wasn't afraid of being alone? Would I still chase them if I didn't need their presence to validate my worth? The love you deserve doesn't watch your every move. It doesn't scan for signs of betrayal. It doesn't keep score. Real love doesn't tighten the grip. It softens it. Real love doesn't demand constant proof. It trusts in stillness. But before you can experience that, you need to stop calling fear a name it doesn't deserve. You need to stop baptizing your panic as passion. You need to stop romanticizing the ache of being needed. Because love is not a cage, and being seen is not the same as being safe. To truly love is to release, to stay without chains. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop trying to be everything for someone else and finally become something for yourself. You say you love them, but look closer. What do you feel when they don't answer? When they pull away? When they choose themselves? Is it love that rises inside you? Or is it panic, rage, collapse? We call it heartbreak, but heartbreak is often ego collapse, the terror of losing the emotional drug you've built your identity around. You needed them, not as a person, but as a function, a mirror, a shield, a bandage to the bleeding parts of you you never learned to hold. Let's stop lying. You weren't in love. You were in need. You needed their validation to feel worthy. You needed their presence to feel real. You needed their love to silence the voice inside you that never felt enough. This is emotional dependence, and dependence is not intimacy. It's fusion. It's not two people choosing each other. It's one collapsing into the other, hoping to disappear inside their arms. But that kind of love never lasts, because it was never love. It was survival. Rollo described this beautifully. When the self is undeveloped, it clings to others not out of love, but out of fear of dissolution, of disappearing. Codependency always looks like devotion, but it's rooted in fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of inadequacy, fear of being nothing without the other. And what happens when that fear drives you? You start bending, sacrificing, erasing yourself to keep them close. You say yes when you want to say no. You hold back your truth so they won't leave. You abandon yourself, little by little, thinking it's love. But love doesn't demand your disappearance. Love doesn't cost your wholeness. True love requires presence, not dependence. It invites your truth, not your compliance. Dependency says, I can't live without you. But real love says, I choose to live with you even though I can live without you. See the difference? One clings, the other respects. One traps, the other sets free. And maybe that's the hardest truth. You don't want love, you want rescue. But no one can rescue you from the void you refuse to face. No one can be your emotional oxygen forever. Eventually, they'll suffocate too. Because when someone becomes your everything, they stop being someone. They become a role, a job, a replacement for the work you still haven't done inside. And here's the tragedy. You think losing them is your deepest fear, but the real loss is losing yourself in the process of holding on. Bell Hooks reminds us, love is an act of will, the intention and action of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. So ask yourself, is what I feel love, or is it my own emptiness echoing back at me? Because if you need someone to feel whole, you'll never be free. And love, the real kind, can only exist where freedom does. Control doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with attention, with small gestures, with soft promises, with someone making you feel like you finally matter. It feels like care, but it's calculation. And once you're hooked on that feeling, once your nervous system associates their presence with safety, the game begins. They say, I just want to know where you are. I just care too much. I get scared when you don't reply. It sounds sweet at first. It feels flattering. Until you start apologizing for needing space. Until you start feeling guilty for being unavailable. Until you start shrinking just to avoid conflict. And now, love has become performance. You're no longer choosing. You're complying. This is how control becomes addiction. It rewards you when you conform. It punishes you when you resist. Sometimes with silence, sometimes with outbursts, sometimes with withdrawal of affection, the one thing you've learned to depend on. And the worst part? You start controlling yourself. You edit your words. You delay your reactions. You filter your needs through the question, will this upset them? You become your own jailer because you'd rather lose your voice than lose their love. But that's not love. That's survival mode. That's emotional manipulation packaged as romance. It's hard to notice when you're inside it because the cycle looks like passion. It looks like intensity. It looks like someone fighting for you.
But what they're really fighting for is their power over you. And here's what no one tells you. Control doesn't always come from bad people. It often comes from wounded ones, scared, insecure, unhealed. People who fear being left will try to bind you. People who never felt chosen will try to own you. But you are not their healing project. You are not their anchor. And love is not supposed to feel like walking on glass. If you find yourself constantly explaining, defending, adjusting, you're not in love, you're in a power struggle. And it will drain you, slowly, brilliantly, until you forget who you were before you became who they needed. Let this be clear. Love without freedom is just fear in a prettier dress. And control, no matter how gentle it pretends to be, is violence against the soul. You are not here to be monitored. You are not here to be managed. You are not here to soothe someone's wounds at the cost of reopening yours. You are here to be met, to be seen, to be chosen not out of need, but out of truth. So the next time someone calls it love, ask yourself, is this nourishing me, or is it training me to disappear?
They didn't choose you. They chose the feeling of being needed, of being irreplaceable, of being the answer to someone else's emptiness. And maybe so did you. Because being needed is intoxicating. It gives your life urgency, importance, meaning. It makes you feel like you matter, even when you're crumbling inside. But here's the trap. The need to be needed isn't love. It's ego, dressed in the costume of devotion. You say you're giving everything to the relationship, but what you're really giving is your identity, piece by piece, hoping that if you disappear into usefulness, they'll never leave. This isn't generosity. It's emotional bargaining. I'll meet your needs if you keep me from facing mine. I'll fix you if you keep me from feeling broken. I'll make myself indispensable so you'll never walk away. Rollo spoke of this deeply, that we confuse love with the desperate hunger for affirmation, that beneath the need to give often hides a fragile self terrified of its own insignificance. You don't want love. You want proof that you matter. You want someone to mirror back your worth because you still can't hold it on your own. So you overfunction, you overgive, you overstay, and you call it love. But if your love requires that someone else stays broken for you to feel whole, it's not love. It's control through self-sacrifice. And if their love disappears the moment you stop serving a role, it was never about you. It was about the feeling they got in your presence. Because here's the bitter truth. To someone running from their own emptiness, your attention is a drug. Your care is a fix. Your presence is relief from their inner chaos. And if they're not healing, they're using you as a distraction from the work they refuse to do. And maybe you're doing the same. You're not in love. You're in a performance, a constant audition for worthiness, a never-ending test to prove you're enough to stay. You've mistaken being essential for being loved. But being needed isn't the same as being wanted. Being useful isn't the same as being valued. Being relied on isn't the same as being respected. Love doesn't say, I can't live without you. Love says, I can live without you, and I still choose you. Bell Hooks reminds us again, love is not about using others to escape ourselves. It's an ethical act, a conscious, mutual choice rooted in truth, not dependency. So here's the question.
Are you building connection? Or are you building a dependency that masks your fear? Because if your role in someone's life feels like a job you're afraid to quit, that's not love. That's self-abandonment with a romantic name tag. The need to be needed is not intimacy. It's ego trying not to disappear. And real love will never ask you to disappear to feel safe.
You say you love them, but can you let them go? Can you love someone without holding them hostage to your fear? Can you stay in connection without turning it into control? Can you want them without needing them to complete you? These aren't easy questions, because most of what we've learned about love is fear dressed up in flowers. We've been taught to cling, to chase, to fight for love even when it's already bleeding. We glorify endurance over truth, possession over presence, familiar pain over unfamiliar peace. But Bell Hooks was clear. Love is the will to nurture your own or another's spiritual growth. Not comfort, not convenience, not someone to bleed into so you don't have to feel your own wounds. True love is not about escaping your loneliness through another person. It's about standing with them, both of you whole, both of you seen, both of you free. And freedom is the part we fear most, because freedom means they might leave. Freedom means they might grow. Freedom means you can't manipulate your way into safety. But that's the paradox. Only love that doesn't grip lasts. Only love that allows space breathes. Only love that respects the other's path becomes sanctuary, not a trap. And yet we panic in the silence. We beg for reassurance. We confuse intensity with depth. We say things like, "I can't live without you," as if codependency were romantic, as if the highest form of love is self-erasure. But Rollo May called this out decades ago, reminding us that love born of fear becomes domination, that the refusal to accept uncertainty leads to possessiveness, not intimacy. To love means to open ourselves to the negative as well as the positive, to grief, sorrow, and disappointment, as well as to joy, fulfillment, and an intensity of consciousness we did not know was possible before. Real love is not safe, it's sacred. And sacred things are always surrounded by mystery, not certainty. You won't get guarantees. You won't get ownership. You won't get permanence, but you will get presence. If you're brave enough to stop grasping. Because love that lasts isn't built through control. It's built through courage. The courage to stay, not because you need to, but because you choose to. The courage to let the other evolve, even when it scares you. The courage to hold your own pain without making it someone else's responsibility. This is the kind of love that doesn't look impressive on Instagram. It doesn't always come with grand declarations or dramatic sacrifices. It comes quietly. In the way you listen, in the way you respect space, in the way you let go of the need to be everything to someone else just so you don't have to face the emptiness in yourself. You want to know if it's real? Here's a better question. Can you still love them if they never need you again? Can you honor their path, even if it leads away from you? Can you want their happiness, even if you're not part of it? That's where real love begins, where it gets uncomfortable, where the ego dies, where the soul takes over.
Because love without freedom isn't love. It's fear wrapped in attachment, addiction, and control. But love with freedom, it's terrifying and beautiful and alive. It doesn't demand, it invites. It doesn't consume, it expands. It doesn't whisper, "Stay or I'll break." It says, "If you go, I will still be whole." So if you want to love, really love, you must be willing to lose. To lose the fantasy, to lose the illusion of control, to lose the part of you that believes you are only lovable if you are needed. Because the truth is, you are already enough, with or without them, wanted or not, chosen or not, loved or not. And when you start loving from that place, from fullness, not hunger, you won't need to trap anyone to feel worthy. You'll stop performing. You'll stop chasing. You'll stop mistaking validation for connection. You'll finally be able to say, "I don't love you to fix me. I love you to share who I am, whole, imperfect, and free." That's not a fairy tale. That's not a fantasy. That's love.
If this moved something inside you, stay. We're building something for those who don't fake it. Subscribe, not just for the content, but for the confrontation. And if this left a wound, maybe it was meant to. Sometimes the best way to go deeper is to share the pain. Share it. Someone out there still confuses being needed with being loved. Still calls control care. Still performs just to feel wanted. This won't rescue them, but it might break the illusion. The illusion that love must mean sacrifice. The illusion that safety means possession. If this stirred something in you, let it reach the ones still stuck in roles they didn't choose. Because maybe freedom is the only kind of love that lasts.